All right, Flamy Grant. I just have to smile every time I say that name because it's so good. I know I already said that to you. But welcome to Drag Star Diva. I'm gooped, I'm gagged, I'm plucked to to be talking with you.
I love it. I'm beaten and snatched and all the things too to be here. I mean, drag star diva, like these words, I love these words. So, yes.
It's a great name.
Hmm.
And speaking of great names, because I already complimented Flamey Grant, like I really want to start there because we'll get into, your history and who you are and everything, but I know that Amy Grant is really important to you,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yes,
So you grew up in North Carolina.
I did. Yep. Western
Yes.
North Carolina in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Appalachia. So, I told you before this that I'm from Arkansas, so I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of like overlap there. We probably encountered a lot of the same things and listened to some same music. And so, who is Amy Grant to you? How did that inspire your name? And then we'll kind of like backtrack, but I want to start right there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Amy is the undisputed queen of Christian pop, and has been so for, I mean, the better part of 4 decades now. So I I was only allowed to listen to Christian music growing up in my house. Like there was a pretty strict ban on secular media, up until I was, really in high school, honestly. So we would watch some TV, like we could watch like Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman together, and Star
Yeah,
Trek
that
and
checks
things like
out.
that.
Okay.
But for the most part, like it was, if I couldn't find it at our local Christian bookstore, I wasn't allowed to listen to it. So um I had an auntie who would sing music in church all the time, and she would sing a lot of Amy Grant songs. I mean, our church itself, we had like Thy Word and El Shaddai, and just some of the older like stuff from when she was doing more like praise. I guess
Hmm.
you would call it praise songs, that churches can sing. So yeah, I mean, I don't remember a time in my life when Amy Grant was not part of it. So
Sure. And I'm sure her Christmas albums were really big for your
oh,
family too, right?
oh my gosh. My grandma had Home for Christmas, which is the one where she's kind of like peeking out from behind the tree in that gorgeous red. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, love it. My grandma had that CD. We like before we had CDs, before my family had CDs, our grandma had that, and I would put it on every Christmas and just like blast it and be like, "Quiet, everyone! Amy's singing."
Well, that is incredible. So it was clear that even if you were not in these sort of secular spaces, you definitely had your diva that you imprinted on, which is a
Yeah,
very classic, like queer experience to have.
that's what we do, right?
Yeah. And
Is
have you had a chance to interact with Amy at all yet?
No,
That's
not,
coming.
yeah, not in person. I hope so. I hope so. I would love to just meet her, thank her for everything she did for me as a queer kid, and what she's still doing for the queer community. Because all of the queer kids who grew up with Amy, we're adults now, and she's now, being vocal and speaking out in support of our community, which I know is a really hard thing to do in that industry. But Amy's, she's an absolute ally, and I love her to death.
Yeah.
I do hope I get to meet her. But yeah, I love what you like brought up about that being like just such a common queer kid um, experience, and like to be imprinted on by your diva, right?
Hmm.
And that what's wild to me about that is that that's not something that was introduced to me through queer culture at all.
Yeah.
I had no contact with queer culture until well out of, like, really honestly outside of college. I really didn't get into any queer culture. So that was something that was purely like innate and an
Hmm.
impulse in me, that I went and I sought out like my divas and was like, this is who I resonate with, this is who I relate to. Um, if anything, I was being groomed to be straight, right? I was being groomed to
Of
be like the
course.
very masculine leader in our very patriarchal church. And so it just goes to show that some things are innate. You cannot take queerness out of us. Like, it is going to emerge. It's part of who we are.
Yeah. And I think that's a really cool universal experience that is special and it's something that unites us even if we don't find each other until later in life, right?
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and for me, I'm in my early 30s, and so when I was in middle school, I started turning to like early internet to find any sort of community, and even then, I was terrified of it.
Yeah.
Terrified of drag queens until my 20s,
Hmm.
and now, like, look, right? Uh, but something for those of you who are watching, you don't have context for Amy Grant and why this is so important. Amy Grant has been shrouded in controversy for decades simply because she was making like pure Christian music and then Christian pop, and then she made a transition in the early 90s, well, really late 80s and in the early 90s
Hmm.
into more like secular pop music, or pop music that could be more open to interpretation. It wasn't specifically saying, God, I love you. This song is about God, right?
Right.
It could be about love. It could be about an
Yeah.
experience that you have, or a feeling or an emotion. Baby Baby being like the prime example. Like it topped
Hmm.
the like the actual Billboard charts, the overall Billboard charts, and that was a huge deal for a Christian artist to do, to cross over. And there have been some other people who have done that since, but Amy really was a blueprint. And so
Yes.
her story, really, I think, is impactful, particularly for queer people who have remained in some sort of like faith circle, because she did something that was really scary and, caused a lot of discord within a certain community of people.
Hmm.
And, I think that's another parallel that I want to draw with you right now, too. You are a vocal, open drag queen who is in these progressive faith spaces, but you have had the very traditional sort of fundamentalist upbringing that you have moved away from, but you stayed tied to your faith.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go back and think about some maybe markers in your life. I do want to draw attention. You mentioned that you were a part of Exodus Ministries, right?
Yes.
Could you just kind of quickly touch on what that is for people who might not know?
Yeah. And if you don't know, I'm very glad that you don't know. And I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of this terrible news. But there was an organization called Exodus International that was truly an international organization. And it was kind of the go-to program that churches, mostly evangelical conservative churches, would use when someone in their congregation said I'm queer, or more likely the way I came out and the way I know a lot of people had to come out, you had to say things like I struggle with same-sex attraction.
There we go.
And so yeah, it's not a 12-step program, but it's not a 12-step program.
Absolutely.
There's like a prescribed pathway that you go through. There are therapy therapy, I'm using air quotes, groups, like group therapy groups. There's a national conference I went to one year, and
Mhm.
it's conversion therapy. Plain and simple. It's the belief that you can change someone's sexual orientation, and through prayer, through Holy Spirit, through all kinds of things. And I self-enrolled because my internalized homophobia was so great and so deep, and I believed so much that what I was taught, that I would be in deep trouble, uh, in deep shit if I were to try and leave my faith community. That a life of exile and pain and like addiction to drugs awaited me if I were to ever try and leave my church for specifically for being queer. And so yeah, I self-enrolled. I did it for 5 years.
Oh, that's a long
The,
time.
it is a long time. Yeah. I mean, less so as the 5 years went on, I was less invested. But the reason I stuck it out through the end of the 5 years is because early on, actually, it was at that national conference I went to. Someone asked one of the presenters, "How long does it take to turn straight if we do this program?" And of course, the presenter hemmed and hawed and said, "Well, it's different for every person, but if you stick with our program,
Yeah.
within 5 years, you should at least see the beginning of changes happening." And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna mark that date in my calendar. Like I will be straight, on whatever, like 2017.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember what year, but And I wasn't, obviously I wasn't, because conversion therapy is a load of horse shit. And unfortunately, it's being pushed in new ways nowadays. Bethel
Yeah.
Church. I just read an article this morning that Bethel Church, Bethel Seminary in Redding, California, has rolled out a brand new, like flashy, cool, hip looking campaign for that's it's just conversion therapy, dressed up. And
They do that every few years too.
yeah,
They
yeah.
rebrand every few years, Bethel in particular. Yeah.
So yeah, and this practice is banned in many states, and it needs to be banned in all of them
And in
because
certain
it's
countries too.
yes, yeah, it's damaging, it's harmful, it's not science. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got on a little bit of a soapbox there, but
No, it's
yeah,
fine.
I did.
What happened for you? What was your turning point? When did you find drag in the midst of all of this? Because I know that drag was kind of your turning point from
Yeah.
what I've read about you, but how did you stumble into that? Because that feels really extreme, right? To
Mm,
go from conversion therapy and like not being able to listen to secular music and then you're a
yeah.
drag queen.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind I am 41 years old, so I have had some time to travel that little that spectrum. But it is an extreme shift and change, and it's one that has happened, I think, because of an expansive love in my life. And I the fear is, I think, what I don't think it actually should have taken me 41 years to get here. It's just that the fear and the indoctrination that I received from my conservative upbringing made all of these steps really difficult to take, really scary to take. I have lost more than one community in my in my journey, having
Yeah.
to leave something super fundamentalist to something that's just like maybe more run of the mill Christian, to then going into more progressive Christianity, to leaving Christianity altogether, and then finally uh, kind of coming back to the place where I find myself today, which I don't think by any means is the last place in my journey. I don't.
Sure.
Who knows where I'll be, what I'll be doing in 20 years with religion or spirituality or anything.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, like we grow, we change, we adapt, and so can our faith. Um, and I, for me, the drag piece came in really late, similar to you. I mean, I was terrified of drag queens. Are you kidding me? They're scary creatures. Especially when you are, so indoctrinated, ingrained with the binary. The gender binary being the standard and being the norm and everything. So you see this person who's just like living loudly outside of that binary, and you don't know what to do with it, you don't know how to process it. And I'm seeing that now, I witness that now, like in my comments and my DMs, like people just don't know what to do with the idea of a Christian drag queen.
Yeah.
And so they lash out. Mostly they lash out and get real mean and stupid. um but I I can't remember the first drag show I ever saw, but I remember one drag queen in particular. Her name's Miriam T. She's now a good friend here in San Diego, and I went to her trivia night several years ago. Um, this was probably 20, I don't know, 16 or 17 or something. Anyway, went to Miriam's. She had a trivia night, and I just remember watching her the whole night and being like, this is a job. Like, I like, wow, like you get
Yeah.
to just walk around and like be this fabulous creature. And she's known for being like San Diego's cranky queen, so she will just she'll read a bitch down. Like,
Yeah.
she's hilarious. And I was just enamored with her. And that just goes to show that you don't always get your first impression right, because she's actually just a terrible human being. I'm just kidding. um
She
she's
sucks.
she's
Yeah.
she's great. She's wonderful, and she actually gave me some of my very first spots on drag stages here in San Diego. So
Love.
forever grateful to her. But it was that kind of like meeting a local queen,
Mhm.
because I had seen, I was aware of Drag Race. I hadn't started watching
Sure.
Drag Race at that point, but I was aware of it. The memes were flying around, that kind of thing. But it was seeing someone in person that made me go, oh, I start to have a bit of an understanding for what this art form is now. And that's what sent me on my then I binged Drag Race and just like became obsessed with this art form. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I wish, I don't I don't believe in living in regret at all, but I do. You have to acknowledge that one of the things that um, high demand religion does is it prevents you from living a full life. And
Mm,
the life I could have had if I had been free to encounter drag much earlier, much sooner, would
sure.
probably be very different. I'd probably be a really different person. I probably would have already won a season of Drag Race. I'm just kidding again.
Manifesting.
I mean, let's manifest. Let's speak it into existence. But no, I'm just saying that like it can be hard to like reckon with the years of your life that you wasted.
Yeah.
And again, even the word wasted I don't like, because it's our journey is our journey and we just have to be on it and embrace it, transcend and include, as they say. But anyway, all that to say, yeah, my husband and I were just watching drag race one night, and I turned to him and I was like, do you have a drag name? Because I don't have a drag name and I think I need one. And he was like, of course I do, of course I do, it's Amanda Do It. Which is cute, right? It's very cute.
Oh my
Uh,
God. And he had it at the
uh,
ready too.
he had it at the ready, yeah. And that was actually someone's real name. They had seen it on a piece of mail, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's like a drag name." So he
Love.
just like claimed it. So that it was that night that the name Flamy Grant was born. We were just kind of like spitballing, and I love the names that are wordplay with your favorite diva.
Mhm.
So he laughed and kind of thought it was goofy, which my husband has no religious trauma whatsoever. He didn't grow up in the same kind of he
God
grew up
bless
free.
him.
I know, right? Imagine being free to be yourself. So I was like, if he's laughing, then I know there's a whole generation of like youth group, church camp kids who will love that. So I kind of logged it away, and then the pandemic came, and I suddenly had time. I had hours and hours of spare time because we were all sheltering in place. And
Yeah.
that's where I really started to do it in earnest.
Gotcha. So where did the music piece come in for you? Were you
Hmm.
singing in church the whole time? Was that a big part of your life? And how was your relationship to music evolving as your faith was evolving as well?
Yeah, I've always been singing in church. I think I wrote my first song when I was 9 years old. Um, it was a worship song, of course,
Well, of course.
and naturally. And so yeah, music has been huge for me. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't allowed to listen to anything other than Christian music growing up. So
Yeah.
that's what I loved. And to a degree, still love a lot of the 90s and early 2000s Christian music that I grew up in. Um, I found when I did finally start exploring music outside of Christian music, it was Lilith Fair. Actually, it was I just fell in love with like Sarah
Oh,
McLachlan and
oh
like
my
all,
God.
yes,
You're
the
speaking to my
singers.
lesbian spirit. This is
Oh,
really, yes.
the 90s
Yes.
singer songwriters, I can't do any better than that. The Sean Colvins, the Sarah McLachlans, Paula Cole, like
Lisa
I
Loeb, yeah, like
Lisa
anything
Loeb.
in that category, I'm obsessed with. I
Yes.
love it. Yes.
So my favorite, that's all my favorite. Natalie Merchant, she's probably my
Oh,
favorite songwriter of all time. Love her. So anyway, yeah, music's just always been there. It's always been a massive part of me and my creativity. I started leading worship in high school. I went to a Christian high school, so we had worship. And then in college as well. And then from there, I moved right into being a worship leader at churches. And I've done that mega churches, at little teeny tiny startup churches that I have helped to start, and
yeah.
conservative churches and progressive churches as I got older. So that's just always been part of my life. And honestly, when I first started painting my face during pandemic, it was just fun, and it was for me, and it was inner child work in a lot of ways. And I didn't immediately connect the music to the drag. We started do my I share a house with two other musicians, and we started doing a pandemic live stream like so many artists did, where we would sing to 30 people on Facebook every Thursday night. And we did cover concerts, so just we would always theme it, and would just do songs in a theme, and we ended up covering something like 700 songs during the first 18 months of the pandemic. It was
Gosh.
crazy. Yeah, but I started showing up to those in drag, and so singing these cover songs in drag, and then realizing that there was this, I could write songs as Flamy, realizing that I had a second like personality, like a second voice I could use as a songwriter. Wow, that blew open my songwriting big time.
Yeah.
I kind of had gotten bored with songwriting, almost, like not bored, but I just wasn't as prolific as I was when I was younger. And having Flamy now to like just be the knowing that that's going to be her voice singing the words, it just feels like I've opened up a whole new like mode level of creativity. And
Yeah.
it's fabulous. I love it.
Yeah, she's like your conduit.
Hmm.
I understand too what you're saying because I'm sure when you were young and everything like made sense to you about, you know, your faith and religion, you really had something driving, even if it was misguided, you had something really like driving you, right? And then whenever
Yes.
you lose that, that's why people like
Yeah.
go back to cults, they go back to the abusive relationship, you know, and I'm oversimplifying. But
No, but you're hitting a nail on a head right now
yeah,
that I haven't even really considered. You're absolutely right.
Drag Star Diva, profound,
Ah,
groundbreaking, hard-hitting journalism here.
I love it.
But no, and I think it's just because I relate. I had so much passion and I was throwing so much of myself into like needing to be, and I think a lot of like religion was a lot of my need to be perceived as, you know, good or be perceived as someone who achieves things and
Hmm.
whatever, some sort of gold star type of student and person, right? And
Yeah.
then whenever I started stripping all of that away, it was like, huh, where is my motivation coming from?
Wow.
You know? And
Wow.
what's funny about my story, to make this about me,
As we should, as we
as we
always should
should,
do in every moment of every day.
I'm going to take up as much space as possible. No, my parents are not religious. I started
Ah.
going to church when I was a
Oh,
preteen.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went like really deep and I like started off like Southern Baptist and then I got a little like culty Assembly of God campus ministry in college and
Mm,
that's a whole other conversation. And then I started moving to the progressive spaces and right now I'm like not anywhere.
mhm.
Um, and that's why your story is so fascinating to me. And so, you know, I feel like in a very small way, I have towed some like controversial lines as well, which brings me to what's going on for you right now and why you are having such a deserved big moment, I think, in such a public way. You had a little tussle with a person with terrible hair and who is just an absolute toad. He's like a fucking flea. Okay. He's the
Oh,
worst. He's
it's
been just repulsive to watch in his rise as well too.
mhm.
So we're talking about a person named Sean, was it Foyt?
So I think that's how
Something
it's
like that.
pronounced.
And you know, really for quick context here, Sean didn't like that you put another artist in drag for a video, right? That's
Correct.
essentially what
Correct.
kind of started this firestorm. I'm
Yep.
sure that he was waiting for a moment to demonize someone and he probably has an Excel spreadsheet. So was this your first kind of like public tussle with someone? Because that's what brought you to the forefront for me. Or did
Yeah.
you have any sort of other internet things happen for you in this way?
I mean, I've had lots of internet spat, tussles, whatever you want to call them. People coming for me. People come for me all the time
Yeah,
on my pages, and I do have a pretty strict policy for myself that I don't go on other people's pages. I don't.
same.
I don't. I do not show up on their page and comment that I don't like what they're doing. But a lot of people do not have that a boundary for
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
They come onto my page all the time. So and actually a lot of my early success, whatever you want to call it, on TikTok was um, clapping back, frankly, making response videos to people who came
yeah.
onto my TikTok page, because it's fun for me. I like it. Like it's a creative
Same.
exercise. Yeah, it's
Yes.
and it doesn't. I'm just the personality where like I'm sorry, but if you're a stranger, your opinion means literal dick to me. Like and not good dick. It just doesn't mean anything to me.
Dick you
It's just
regret.
yeah,
Yeah.
dick you regret, exactly. Yeah, like I just don't care. I'm sorry, especially if you're, and not to say that like positive like feedback from strangers is something I also don't care about. Although even that doesn't affect me as much, I think, as it does a lot of people. I just don't. I'm more of that. I don't know. I'm an Enneagram 8, if that speaks to anybody. So
It does.
yeah, okay, good. So
It does
I
to me.
just yeah, I just it's not gonna affect me. So I like to have fun sometimes with I like to troll the trolls.
Yeah.
And really for me it's all about taking the piss out of their whatever their fire, their anger. It's just like, this
Mhm.
is silly. You're being silly, like coming on someone's page and condemning the way they choose to live. Like it's just silly, and I'm gonna treat it like the silly thing that it is. But
Yeah.
Sean was for sure the most high profile account that's ever like platformed me in that way. And so yeah, you know, I didn't think too much about it when I responded. I was just like, I'm gonna treat it like I treat every other troll, and just, you know, go in and be cute and be funny with it, and like not take him seriously because he's not a serious person.
Bozo, absolute
Yeah,
clown. Yeah.
yeah,
And really, there's nothing special to say about Sean. Sean is a person who regurgitates certain talking points and
mhm,
doesn't think for himself. And that's what happens in
correct.
a lot of these, groups of people, the group think, the things that they say that they know will rouse their base, right?
Yep.
And I'm so glad that it backfired because now you are being seen and you had the top Christian album on the iTunes charts, and your song Good Day hit number 2 on the singles chart on iTunes, right?
It hit one
It hit
actually
number one. Oh my God.
for a couple hours on August or on July 27th, and I have the screenshots to prove it.
As you
But yeah,
fucking should. And also,
yeah.
that's 2 days before my birthday, so you're welcome. That was my present
Yay.
to you. I'm so
Yes,
selfless.
absolutely.
So people are hearing your music. And I'm sure it's resonating with people. I imagine that you're getting a lot of people who are messaging you and talking about positive things that you're doing for them, right? What
Yeah,
kinds of what
absolutely.
kinds of positive things have come from this? We've talked about all the shit. So what's going on?
Yeah, my DMs are, I can't possibly keep up. I've never experienced anything like it, and it's wild. And I I mean, it's a lot of trauma dumping. There's plenty of people
Sure.
coming and sharing their stories, but it's in, it's in the most like wonderful way, in that
Hmm.
like they're seeing themselves, and the reason they feel safe to share their trauma is because they've seen something happening that reflects their own story. And that doesn't happen for us nearly enough, for queer folks. Like we just don't get that opportunity to see the the expansive breadth of our experience represented in media, right? um
Hmm.
so uh it's an honor to be able to like hear those stories from people. And um so much support, far more support than vitriol and backlash. There's plenty of
Good.
that,
Yeah.
but the support has been wild, and it just reinforces for me that people feeling seen and feeling safe is like so vital and so important to our thriving. If we go through life and we just don't see ourselves represented anywhere, we'll never feel safe. And without that sense of, not even the safety, honestly, because it's more about, for me, the bravery. It's more about, because we're never safe, right? We're never actually truly safe. Like there's
Yeah.
always a risk that something bad could happen. um, but we can come at it with bravery, and that's the thing that we can be in control of, and have some agency over, is what we bring in response to the fearful situations that we find ourselves in as queer people, especially in 2023 in
Yeah.
these United States of America.
These.
um, yeah, so we've got to be brave, and it's hard to be brave if you don't see that happening, if you don't see yourself represented, if you don't see other people being brave. So we that's I feel such it, it's an honor. It's just an honor to be able to like even a little bit represent that for somebody. So I love it.
Yeah. So I I wanted to take a second and I had lyrics I needed to pull up because there's a line that I have to talk with you about. We're pivoting
Mm,
here a little bit.
okay.
So you have a you have a song called Esther, Ruth, and Rahab,
Yes, I
and there's a line in here. You're talking a lot about how men are allowed to just pray out loud in church, and women are often not, and they're silenced and they can't be visible, right?
hmm
And so you say, but literally any man was welcome to stand up, and for an hour we would listen to them talk. So I guess the lesson there was God would only hear a prayer if it came from a person with a cock.
I did that. I released a Christian album with the word cock in it. Yes, I did.
Now that's gonna be really appealing to Drag Star Diva readers and supporters. So I needed to talk about that moment.
Yes.
I mean, do you like do you laugh at these moments? You know, because like some people are going to take that very seriously, but most people I feel like are going to get it if they're listening. So,
Yeah.
I mean, was that like super fun to write for you? Were you just kind
Oh
of
my
like,
God.
did you feel rebellious writing that? Like, how did you feel as like the recovering Christian kid inside of you?
This song was super cathartic to write. It was also like the hardest song I've ever written, I think. A lot of times I'm just lucky with the whole, like songwriters talk about the muse just, gifts you a song and you like wake up and it's just on the page, and that's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because that does happen sometimes. And but this one I had to work for. I knew what I wanted to say. Like I knew going in that I needed a song on this record that was like, first of all, just a feminist anthem. I wanted to like represent women well, and tell some of the story that I saw from women in my life growing up. My sibling, who was AFAB and raised culturally female,
Mhm.
um, experienced. We had the same upbringing, right, in the same place with the same people, and their experience of it was dramatically different than mine
Yeah.
because I was being raised as a boy and then a man to like lead this congregation, and
Yeah.
my sibling was being raised to be submissive
Yeah.
and support the men, and like they're just very different roles we both had to play. So um and it's just the conversations we've had over the years about our upbringing and just kind of like learning to see it through each other's eyes. Like I just really wanted to have a moment that explained like why I'm doing drag and spirituality together, why I'm very much aware of the argument, particularly from conservative women on the right, but fairly so sometimes from a lot of women, that like there's a concern. I have a concern that drag might be, what exploitative of femininity, like um I'm very much I'm very much not on board with the argument of the right wing argument about drag and being
Sure.
woman face and those kinds of things. Like that's obvious propaganda bullshit that it's just their talking points that they repeat over and over. But I also understand that someone who hasn't grown up with drag or doesn't understand drag like could come to it with those concerns initially. And so I wanted to address those things and talk about those things. And then I wanted to talk about who really raised me. These men talked their asses off in church, and I really did go to a church where women cover their hair, sit silently, don't speak, and
Yeah.
men literally just like kind of popcorn around the room and take turns standing up. We didn't have a
Yeah.
pastor or anything. They just like,
Whew.
if you have a penis, you get to stand up and talk to everybody.
That is
That's
some
what
fun D
qualifies you.
shit.
It's
Yeah.
very
Wow.
fundy, very fundy.
Whew.
So yeah, it felt really good and really cathartic to write that song and just call a spade. And um you know I didn't necessarily intend to go in there with like writing words like cock and snatch into a quote unquote Christian song, but it's just what worked, it's just what came out. And so that's what happened. And I do love performing that song so much, especially to an audience that's not familiar with me, because the whole first two stanzas of that song are it's storytelling. It's like, and it draws you in. It's like, oh, you went to what kind of church? Like, what's happening? And people are really kind of leaning in, listening. And then I hit them with that line, and the shock wave over the audience is my favorite thing every
Yeah,
time.
you
I
hit him
just
with a
love it.
cock. Yeah, just right in the face. That's
Right in the
great.
face.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions about your music because if people are just discovering you and they're listening, like I've just listened to you for the first time this week, right? And
Mhm.
and like I said, I found some lines that I just thought were really fun. And what is your most Lilith Fair song, would you say? And then what is
Mm.
your most Amy song?
Oh boy. Okay. Oh, fun, fun, fun. All right. My most Lilith Fair song, honestly, it might be Esther, Ruth, and Rahab, just because it's like that is my feminist anthem.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I'm just running through the track list in my head here. Um, I mean, I've got some really like deeply personal stuff on the record too that's not probably not what most people expect from a drag artist in any way, shape, or form, right? Like it's just some truly confessional singer-songwriter
Yeah,
shit with like Desire of Your Heart and Scratches in particular is kind of like both of those are really like I mean those are my that's me trauma dumping on it on the listener,
yeah.
honestly. um and so those I think could probably fit on any Lilith Fair stage. My most Amy song though, it's probably like, well, we did cover. I covered an Amy song, so we do takes a little time on the record, which
Ugh,
is Amy wrote in '97, I think, or released in
yeah.
'97.
That was her
And my
Lilith Fair moment, like for
Yeah, right,
real. Yeah.
totally. And Semler, my friend Semler, sings on that
Hmm.
track with me, and they're fantastic, and I love it so much. But I would say like my song that's the most Amy would probably be the last one, "Good Day," which is the track that ended up charting on the Christian charts. And just in that it's a song I wrote for my church. We were It's one of the ones I kind of had to go back into my repertoire when I realized I was going to be recording a full length Flamy album because I hadn't written 10 songs yet for Flamy. So
Yeah,
I dug back into my repertoire and pulled this one that I wrote for my church, which was a, a quote unquote worship song, in so much as it's like a corporate thing that we're singing in the second person, right? But most worship
sure.
songs, you do that, you're singing to God, and this song is really singing, singing to ourselves, singing to the church
Yeah.
itself,
It's
and
like a
saying like,
diary entry,
yeah,
It's like it's a,
very that, yeah, and it's it's bringing an accusation, frankly, to the church and saying like, this is what you've done
yeah.
to me as a queer member, as a queer part of this community.
Hmm.
This is the effect that you've had on me and us when we sing it corporately. So, and
Yeah.
it's just kind of it's an anthemy, folky thing. So that's why it probably aligns with Amy.
Is the remix album coming out soon for the clubs or like
I mean, I would love someone to take this and remix it. I don't know how it works with Americana music, but I would love to see that. Love it.
listen, if Trixie Mattel can have remixes, I mean,
Girl,
you can have
true,
remixes.
true.
You
And
can have remixes.
I will put it out there. Like if you love to do that, if that's your jam, by all means, let's collab because I would love to see a club remix of
Listen,
like of Esther.
listen. Okay, but sit with me here for a moment. Haven't you seen those TikToks where people are like, I wanna hear this mashed up with this, and then some TikTok DJ finds it and then they do it. You should put it on the talk, put it on the clock app and just see if
You're
anybody
right.
bites because I think
You're
that they
absolutely right.
would, and that would
You're
be a
right.
banger. And then I'll like choreograph a dance to it and it'll be viral hit. It'll be fine.
Awesome. Love it.
Okay, I'm really curious now that we've heard a little bit more about you and who you are. How has the drag community embraced you and, what you offer? Do you feel like you've been met with resistance in some spaces, and do you feel like you've been embraced? I'm just kind of curious, and this isn't to point any fingers at anyone, but you're
Oh,
dealing with a lot of people with trauma from all over, you know what I mean? All sides.
yeah.
So how has that been received?
I mean, almost across the board, just in the most generous possible way. Like
Beautiful.
I you're gonna make me emotional.
Hmm.
the drag community for me has become like it's been the community I walked into after leaving a church community, right?
Yeah.
So um and I fucking love my sisters and my siblings and my kings and queens and things in the drag
Hmm.
community. San Diego has been so good to me. Like I said, Miriam welcomed me on her stages. I've had other uh, drag art performers here who've invited me to be on their, in their casts regularly. And I've got I have two performances period left in San Diego, and they're both at drag clubs and are traditional drag performances, not like my original music. So that's how I'm going out of San Diego, because I don't know if we mentioned this, but I'm moving to North Carolina in 3 weeks. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, that's a whole other part of this.
Yeah.
but but yeah, I have felt so embraced and welcomed. I remember my very first drag stage that I performed on. My sister Nadia, who wasn't my sister at the time, I literally met her that day. She came up to me, Nadia Simone, and she was like, "Baby, you look nervous. How are you doing?" I was like, "I'm very nervous. I'm terrified." And she was like, "You just go out there, the show will go on no matter what you do. You just get to the end of that track, baby, okay?" And then, like 2 years later, she came up to me at a show and said, "I remember when I remember your first show, and you felt like you had imposter syndrome, and like you didn't feel like a real drag queen." And she's like, "I want to tell you, baby, you're a drag queen." And that just mm, like you can't get that affirmation from anybody else other than a seasoned drag queen, right? Like
Yeah.
that just means the world. So I just love the drag community. I think we're the best. We're doing it the best. We are the best people. We have it figured out. And frankly, everyone should follow us and elect Honey Mahogany and just put us into, political positions of power. Like the world will be better if you listen to drag queens.
Amen. A woman, a
A woman,
person,
a them, yeah.
a they, them.
Mhm.
That's incredible. And I love that a drag queen can absolutely read you the house down boots and
Yes.
end you, but also breathe so much life into you
Mhm.
and empower you and make you feel like you're on top of the world. So
Oof,
that's
so
so
good.
lovely, lovely to hear. I have one last very serious question for you.
Okay. Put on my serious face.
If you could be any condiment or dipping sauce, which would you be?
I would for sure be honey mustard.
I love
I
that.
just love it. I don't have a reason. It's just my favorite one.
That's perfect.
I will put it on everything.
For me, and as a fellow Southerner, I think you will understand this. I love ranch dressing
Hmm.
as a dip.
Yes.
But in particular, there's something very specific about a place that has a pizza buffet that makes their own ranch. They mix it up in the
Oh,
back.
oh
That's a
yeah.
very specific brand of ranch, and that is my top ranch.
Oh, amen. That's just a moment for the
Yeah.
ranch.
Hmm.
My husband works for a brewery, Hillcrest Brewery. It's the world's first gay brewery here in San Diego, and they are a pizza place, and they have their own ranch, and it is, yeah. I know exactly
I
what you mean.
I just soaked through my shorts, so thank you so much for that. And lastly, any
Glorious.
any other things that you want to plug? Anything coming up? Anything that we should be excited about for Flamy
I
Grant?
mean, yeah, I will just say, so I'm moving back to North Carolina in 3 weeks, and I'm going to be touring all over, but excited to tour more on the East Coast because I haven't had that chance yet. I've only done a few shows out there. So look for me all over the Southeast in the next couple of months. I'll be in the Northeast as well come November, and I'll be also in the Plain States and the Midwest here and there sporadically. So I'm just excited to be I'm bringing the agenda to you. I'm bringing the gay agenda to your town, and I can't wait.
Thank goodness. It has been missing. Well, if you ever come to Dallas, that's where we are, you have to let us know,
Oh,
okay?
good.
Because
Absolutely.
I will be front row, titties out,
Yes.
and ready to see you perform.
Awesome.
This has
I
been
will
so
definitely let you know.
lovely. Yes.
Thank you. It's been great for me too. I really appreciate you taking the time and having me.
I love when a man says it's been great for me too. Thank you so much. But I really do appreciate it, Flamey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.